I found out my sister's fiancé had been cheating for months. I waited until the wedding to expose him. She ran out crying, and I felt no regret. My sister Lily and I were never great friends, but we got along well growing up. She was 4 years older and always had to be first in everything. First to drive, first to graduate, first to obtain a job, typical sibling behavior. I did my own thing, attending community college while working at a veterinary clinic, saving money, and finally earning a degree in accounting. Lily went straight to university on our parents' pay, earning a marketing degree she never utilized. When I started dating Ethan, Lily suddenly became opinionated about everything. He was too short. His position with the fire department was not prominent enough, and his vehicle was too outdated. Meanwhile, she was only dating people for around 3 weeks before they ghosted her. Ethan and I moved in together after 3 years, and Lily arrived unexpectedly to view the apartment. They said the neighborhood was dangerous and the kitchen was out of date. We lived in a pleasant area and had recently rebuilt our kitchen ourselves. When Ethan proposed on our 4th anniversary at the beach where we first met, I phoned Chloe first because I was overjoyed. She congratulated me and then inquired whether I was pregnant. When I responded no, she expressed amazement that Ethan would commit without a cause. I should have known she would attempt something. We scheduled a little engagement dinner at my favorite Italian restaurant. Just family and close friends, perhaps 25 people. Despite the fact that toasts are often reserved for weddings, Lily insisted on offering one. My mother thought it was sweet. Halfway through dinner, Lily stood up with her wine glass and began discussing how marriage is about trust and honesty. Then she dropped it. She said she didn't feel good celebrating after seeing Ethan at a pub last month with a blonde who appeared extremely intimate. The entire table became silent. Ethan's mother dropped her fork. My dad's cheeks turned crimson. Ethan seemed perplexed and stated he hadn't been to a bar in months. Lily doubled down and said she had images. When people demanded to view them, she explained that she removed them to protect me. My cousin Sophia really laughed out and stated that Lily was full of it. Lily began weeping about how she was only looking out for me, and no one believed her. Ethan took out his phone and showed everyone his location history, confirming he had been at work or home every night that month. Lily whispered that she could have gotten the dates incorrect. Everyone was uneasy as the supper came to an end early. In the parking lot, Lily revealed she made it up because she suspected Ethan was concealing something. No evidence, just vibes. My mother demanded that she apologize, but Lily said that I was exaggerating and that she was doing her sisterly duties. I stopped talking to her entirely. 5 months later, Lily quit her mall job because she continued taking longer breaks to flirt with the guy at the phone repair kiosk. She called, sobbing about rent, and said she could stay with us for a few weeks. I said no. She said I was wrecking our relationship for nothing. I hung up. My parents pressed me to forgive her. But I was finished. Then something interesting occurred. Lily began dating a new person, Jason, who remained with her. They got engaged within 9 months. She made a big deal about her ideal relationship and how she met her soulmate. She planned a big wedding that she couldn't afford. When we asked our parents for money, they handed her $12,000. When we asked our grandparents, they contributed an additional $7,000. That wasn't enough for her ideal venue. That's when I became petty. Jason's ex-girlfriend Megan worked at my veterinary practice. We'd never talked about him before, but she said at lunch that Lily was marrying her ex. I inquired as to how it had ended. Megan said Jason had cheated on her with 3 separate women over a 2-year period, and she had receipts, genuine receipts, text messages, images, and even footage from security cameras in his apartment complex. Jason was still conversing with one of them. I didn't do anything with this knowledge immediately, but I did take Megan out for drinks with my cousin Sophia, who had called out Lily at my dinner. Sophia had a loud mouth and enjoyed drama. Within a week, our whole extended family was aware of Jason's past. Nobody spoke to Lily directly, but individuals began refusing the wedding invitation. Her maid of honor unexpectedly had a business travel that weekend. Her college pals recalled previous obligations. Even our grandparents said that they could be traveling. Lily panicked and requested me to be maid of honor when her first option dropped out. I agreed graciously. I spent the next 2 months being the perfect sister. I helped with decorating, went to dress fittings, and organized a fantastic bachelorette celebration. Jason's history was never addressed once. The wedding day arrived. Requested Reds is now available on Spotify. Check the link in the description or comments. I stood at the altar, clutching Lily's bouquet, and watched her and Jason exchange vows in front of everyone. My heart hammered so fiercely that I imagined others might hear it. The officiant went over all of the traditional wedding rituals about love and commitment. When he got to the bit about objections, I stood quite motionless. Some folks in the throng turned to stare at me since they were all aware of the engagement dinner issue. I simply smiled and gazed down at the flowers. This wasn't going to be one of those Hollywood moments where I stood up and caused a scene. What I had planned was so much better than that. The event continued, and I delivered an excellent performance. I handed Lily her bouquet at the appropriate time, fixed her train when she turned around, and smiled for all the shots. Nobody could foresee what was coming. The cocktail hour began, and guests walked to the reception room as the wedding party took photographs. I excused myself and met the wedding organizer behind the bar. She was checking something on her clipboard. I approached with my nicest grin and informed her that Lily had a particular request she had forgotten to share. The organizer seemed perplexed because women seldom forget to discuss items on their wedding day. I stated that Lily wanted a surprise presentation during the reception, something romantic to Jason. She questioned why Lily hadn't told her straight. I said that Lily was concerned that explaining it might cause her to become overly emotional and destroy the surprise. The coordinator still seemed dubious, so I took out the USB disk I had prepared. I told her everything was all set to go, only needed to be added before the first dance. She accepted it and said she'd check with the AV man. I thanked her and hurried away before she could ask any more questions. Next I found the photographer. He was examining photos on his camera at the entryway. I told the same tale regarding Lily's surprise slideshow. He seemed less worried than the coordinator because photographers aren't often involved in receptions, but I wanted to make sure he was aware so he could capture Lily's reaction. I told him Lily would be very touched, and we'd want those images. He nodded and stated that he would place himself at the head table. Perfect. Lily had worked hard for 4 months to decorate the reception hall, and it looked fantastic. Round tables with white tablecloths and gold centerpieces, string lights hanging from the ceiling, and a gigantic cake in the corner that cost more than my monthly rental. Everyone found their seats, and dinner service began. I sat at the head table, between Ethan and one of Chloe's bridesmaids. Ethan gripped my hand under the table and asked if I was all right. I told him that I was okay. He seemed relieved since he probably expected me to be unhappy about having to come here after everything with the engagement dinner, if only he knew. Dinner proceeded pleasantly, with everybody eating and conversing. Then came the toasts. Jason's best man spoke first, telling a funny college anecdote. Then it was my time. I stood up, holding my champagne glass, and glanced at Lily. She smiled at me through tears as if she was overjoyed that I was there to support her. I began about sisterhood and how we had gone through everything together growing up. Said sisters know each other better than anybody else. That we can see each other's genuine selves even when we try to conceal them. Lily nodded and dabbed her eyes with a napkin. I discussed trust and honesty in marriage. How crucial it is to truly understand the person you are marrying. The irony was not lost on me, but no one else saw it. I lifted my glass and everyone cheered. Lily sprang up and hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you," into my ear. I hugged her back and sat down. Ethan leaned over and said, "That was a beautiful speech." He asked if I was all right because I was tight. I told him I was just bored of wedding preparations. He gripped my hand and told me we could leave early if I wanted. I shook my head and told him I wanted to remain for at least the first dance. He grinned as he kissed my cheek. Had no clue what was about to happen. Before the first dance, the DJ informed that there will be a special presentation. The lights faded, and people became silent. My pulse raced. But I kept my face neutral. The screen in the front of the room sprang to life. For a moment, there was only the blue loading screen. Then the first screenshot emerged. Jason exchanged text conversations with someone named Ashley. The communications were sent 3 months ago. Very straightforward and explicit. Ashley asked when he could come over. Jason said he'd come up with a reason to leave work early. More texts about meeting at her residence. Then Ashley emailed him a snapshot of them together. The room became quiet. Someone gave a gasp. Additional screenshots displayed on the screen. Messages were exchanged with one lady after another. 3 separate ladies, all within the last 7 months. Some of the communications were sent only last week. One featured Jason discussing how he had to attend a wedding with his fiancé but would text her later. The timestamps confirmed everything. This was not old history. He was constantly cheating while engaged to Lily. Lily's cry broke through the quiet. She sprang up so quickly that her chair tumbled backward. Jason lunged toward the AV equipment table, but the slideshow kept playing. His parents began shouting at him from the table. Chloe's bridesmaids encircled her, but she dropped into them, crying so hard that her entire body trembled. The visitors sat immobile, looking at the TV, each other, or Jason. Some folks had their phones out, recording. The slideshow eventually finished, but the harm was done. Everyone in the room had seen everything. My father figured it out first. He gripped my arm hard enough to bruise it before dragging me away from the head table and into the corridor outside the reception area. His face was flushed, and he was breathing heavily. Asked what the heck I did. I gently told him that I had just made sure Lily understood who she was marrying. That, unlike her falsehoods about Ethan, this was true. He said I went too far. That this was harsh and wicked in ways that beyond everything Lily did at our engagement dinner. I attempted to explain that Lily was going to marry a cheater and that I was protecting her. He stated I could have informed her privately and provided her the proof prior to the wedding. Instead, I chose to embarrass her in front of everyone she knew on what was meant to be her best day ever. Ethan found us in the hall. He took me outside to the parking lot. His hands were trembling, and his voice was filled with a wrath that I had never heard before. Asked what the heck I was thinking. I discussed Megan and the proof, as well as Jason's history of cheating. I said I was protecting Lily in some manner. Ethan looked at me as if he did not recognize me, said that protecting her would have entailed notifying her quietly, not embarrassing her in front of 100 people, not ruining her wedding day, and not using her misery as retaliation for something she committed months ago. I attempted to protest, but he only shook his head. He said he needed a minute and went away. Everything in the reception hall had fallen apart. Guests were departing in tiny groups, conversing quietly. Some individuals cried. Jason was surrounded by his groomsmen at the bar. I could hear him defending himself, saying the communications were outdated or out of context. Nobody was buying it. Lily had shut herself in the bridal suite and refused to come out. Her bridesmaids took turns banging on the door. The wedding organizer appeared confused, unsure what to do with the remainder of the planned celebration. The cake remained untouched. The DJ had packed his equipment. My mother found me in the parking lot. She stepped up to me and smacked me across the face hard. I had never seen her beat someone in my life. She called me harsh and ruthless and that what I did was terrible. I tried to explain Jason's adultery, but she insisted it didn't matter. Said that even if everything in the slideshow was factual, the way I handled it was incorrect. That I ruined my sister's wedding out of spite. That I was vengeful and cruel. And that she was embarrassed of me. Ethan returned and said we were going. We got into his pickup and drove home in total quiet. He would not look at me. His jaw was tight during the journey. When we arrived home, he headed directly to the guest bedroom. Didn't say goodnight. Did not say anything. Just closed the door. I sat alone in the kitchen with the lights turned off. My phone started vibrating with messages, texts from family members accusing me of being sick and terrible, claiming I wrecked Lily's life out of spite. That what I did was worse than anything Lily ever did to me. That I was cruel and vengeful, and that they wanted nothing to do with me. I flipped my phone face down and could still hear it humming. I expected to feel good about what I accomplished. I expected to feel like I had evened the score. Instead, I felt empty and unstable. Ethan emerged from the guest bedroom at roughly 8 a.m. I had not slept at all. He prepared coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table. He said he had been thinking about what I did all night and that it revealed something about my personality that worried him. He wasn't sure he wanted to marry a lady capable of planning such public humiliation. I attempted to persuade that Lily deserved it for what she did at our engagement meal. Ethan remarked that two wrongs do not constitute a right. That what Lily did was horrible, but what I did was far worse. She told one fib at a dinner. I ruined her wedding in front of everyone she knew. He stated he needed distance to reflect about our relationship and if he could trust someone capable of such vengeance. 4 days passed with Ethan sleeping in the guest bedroom and me going through the motions at work like a robot. My phone remained face down on my desk because every time it buzzed, I knew it was another family member reminding me how bad I was. Then Sophia phoned during my lunch break, and I almost did not answer. Her voice came out weak and moist from sobbing. She told me Megan was a wreck, and she'd been contacting Sophia every night, saying she felt awful about what happened. Megan assumed I'd use the knowledge to warn Lily quietly, perhaps pulling her aside before the wedding and showing her the facts so she could make her own decision. Instead, I made it into a big spectacle, destroying Lily in front of everyone. Sophia claimed Megan repeatedly stated that she never intended for things to turn out that way, and that all she wanted was for Lily to know the truth about Jason. Sophia then burst into tears and admitted that she too felt horrible. Said she knew she had a loud mouth and liked drama, but she had no idea spreading rumors about Jason would lead to what I did. Family members were now blaming her for everything, claiming she helped me spoil Chloe's wedding. I tried to reassure Sophia that it wasn't her fault, that I made my own decisions, but she just continued weeping and said she had to leave. My mother phoned that evening while I was gazing at leftover Chinese cuisine that I couldn't eat. Her speech sounded frigid and flat, not like her usual kind tone. She informed me that Lily had not left her flat since the wedding day. I just stayed inside with the curtains closed, not taking calls or texts from anyone but my mother. Jason departed the same night, grabbing his belongings while Lily was locked in the bathroom and leaving his key on the counter. They lost all of their honeymoon deposits to Hawaii. They lost the deposit and first month's rent for the new apartment they were meant to move into together. Mom stated that the landlord refused to return any of it, despite what had occurred. Lily was distraught by Jason's adultery, but she was much more devastated by my humiliation of her, and by her own sister doing so in front of everyone she knew. Mom's voice trembled as she said that numerous family members had stopped communicating to her and her father entirely as a result of what I had done. My aunt and uncle were not responding my calls. My grandparents explained they wanted distance since their daughter was nasty enough to ruin her sister's wedding in the worst way. I attempted to explain how Jason was a cheater, but Mom cut me off. They said it didn't matter what Jason did. What I did was worse. Then she hung up. Ethan's mother phoned 3 days later. When I saw her name on my phone, my stomach fell because Ethan's mother was always pleasant to me, friendly, and caring. Her voice was kind as she began speaking, which made matters worse. She stated she understood how I was upset by what Lily did at our engagement dinner, that what Lily said was inappropriate, terrible, and should not have happened. But my reaction was far out of proportion. It was vicious in a manner that terrified her. She said Ethan had been staying with Zachary and calling her every night, discussing whether I was the person he thought I was, whether someone capable of plotting such calculated revenge would be a good long-term partner, and whether he could trust me not to do something like that again if we had a fight or disagreement. Her remarks resonated differently than my mother's smack or my father's quiet. She didn't shout or reprimand me. She was truly concerned that her son might marry someone capable of what I did. When I tried to justify myself, she simply stated she hoped I would reflect on my actions and what they said about my character. Then she stated she loved me but understood why Ethan wanted space. The call ended, and I sat on the kitchen floor for an hour weeping. 3 weeks after the wedding, my father left me a voicemail. I listened to it 3 times, attempting to grasp his flat factual tone. He stated that Lily had such a severe panic attack that her mother had to take her to the emergency room. Her heart was racing. She could not breathe. She believed she was dying. The doctor diagnosed anxiousness and sent her home with medicine. She was now taking anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications and visiting a therapist twice a week. According to Dad, the therapist informed them that the public humiliation sparked something deeper in Chloe, something related to her lifelong desire for outside acceptance and affirmation. The way I revealed her and Jason's connection in front of everyone hurt her in an already wounded place. I did not simply wreck her wedding. I genuinely harmed her mental health in ways that would take months or perhaps years to repair. Dad's voice remained cold and factual throughout the speech. There is no passion or wrath, simply information provided as if it were a weather report. This felt worse than if he had screamed. The voicemail concluded with him stating he had to leave, and the beep rang in my ear. Ethan arrived home on a Tuesday afternoon when I was meant to be at work. I called in sick because I couldn't stop weeping, and my boss advised me to take a few days off. I heard his pickup in the driveway and assumed he was returning, that we'd chat and work things out. Instead, he stepped in with an empty duffel bag and went directly to our bedroom. He began collecting things from his drawers and packed them carefully. Despite my knowledge, I followed him and asked what he was doing. He said that he would be living with Zachary for a time to think things out. He needed to consider whether he could marry someone who did the same thing I did. He continued to fold shirts and roll socks while he chatted. He said he kept thinking about our future children, whether I'd use the same techniques in later disputes, if I'd teach our children that vengeance was okay when someone wounded you, and whether he could trust me not to turn that calculating cruelty on him someday if things between us were bad. I begged him to remain, to sit down and talk things out. I reached for his arm, but he jerked away. He claimed he couldn't look at me right now without being dissatisfied. The word disappointed impacted more than if he had stated he was furious or upset. He shut the suitcase, took his amenities from the bathroom and went out. His vehicle began and moved away, leaving me standing in our bedroom, surrounded by his half-empty drawers. I began phoning family members, attempting to explain my side. I called my aunt, who had always been kind to me growing up. She responded, but her voice was icy. I attempted to tell her about Jason's cheating, about all of Megan's proof, and about Chloe's plans to marry someone who would undoubtedly cheat on her. My aunt interrupted me and remarked that even if everything about Jason was true, there were 100 other ways to deal with it. I could have informed Lily quietly. Could have presented her the proof prior to the wedding. Instead of trashing her in front of everyone, he might have spoken to her as a sister. Then she told me that until I made a genuine apology to Lily, I was no longer welcome at Thanksgiving or Christmas. Not a phony apology, but a sincere one in which I accepted responsibility for what I did. I claimed Lily never sincerely apologized for the engagement meal. She just said something in the parking lot after being pressured by her mother. My aunt's voice became harsher. Lily's actions were described as an example of poor judgment. Perhaps jealousy. Maybe stupidity. Over the course of several months I plotted psychological warfare. They were her exact words. Psychological warfare. Then she hung up. I called my uncle but he didn't answer. I called my cousin and she directed me to voicemail. I called my grandmother and she answered, but said she couldn't talk to me right now because she was too angry. Everyone rejected me until I gave up trying. Megan texted me and asked to meet for coffee. I almost said no since I didn't want anybody else to tell me how bad I was, but I went anyway and met her near the clinic on Saturday morning. She appeared exhausted, as if she hadn't slept properly. She ordered a coffee and sat across from me in the corner booth. She began talking about how she had been thinking a lot about why she told me the information about Jason. She admitted she was still angry about how he treated her, how he cheated and lied and made her feel insane for suspecting him. She wanted him to face the consequences. I wanted someone to hold him accountable for being a serial cheater. But she never expected me to utilize it in the way I did. I never imagined I'd use it as a weapon to destroy Lily at her own wedding. Megan stated that she had been in therapy for a year, dealing with Jason's trust difficulties. Her therapist also helped her recognize something. Using someone else's suffering for retribution does not cure anything. It only causes additional sorrow and transforms you into someone you don't recognize. She stared at me when she stated that last bit. Not nasty or condemning, simply sad. She said she felt guilty for handing me the ammo, despite the fact that she did not pull the trigger. We sat there for a long, without talking, just drinking coffee and watching people pass by outside. When we departed, she hugged me and expressed her hope that I would work things out. I went home and couldn't stop thinking about what she had said. I forced myself to seriously consider what I did, and why. Sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and wrote everything down. The engagement supper, the humiliation, the outrage I felt when Chloe lied about Ethan. How I wished she had harmed me the way she did. But when I looked at what had transpired, embarrassing Lily did not make me feel any better. It didn't mend the engagement meal or undo what she did. If anything, I felt worse now that Ethan was gone. My whole family despised me, and Lily was on medicine for anxiety and despair. I harmed her more than she did me. The engagement dinner was one night of agony and awkwardness that we eventually recovered from. What I did would haunt Lily for years, maybe forever. Everyone at the wedding will remember her as the bride whose sister revealed her husband as a cheater. During the reception, I took something from her that she would never get back. I sat there writing and weeping, realizing that I had become worse than the person I was angry with. I spent the next several days composing a letter to Lily. I threw away 7 drafts before getting it right. There are no excuses for Jason being a cheater. No bringing up the engagement meal or attempting to excuse my actions. Simply accept full responsibility for my conduct and admit that what I did was harsh and wrong. I shipped it to her apartment and didn't anticipate any answer. 3 months went by. Ethan stayed with Zachary, and we periodically texted about practical matters like bills and mail. My family remained distant. Work became my sole routine. Then Chloe texted me, saying she had received my letter and wanted to meet. We chose a coffee shop midway between our destinations, a neutral location where neither of us had any recollections. I arrived early and watched her walk in. She appeared smaller, exhausted, and strangely more substantial than before. We sat down and were silent for a minute. Then Lily began talking. She said that she was envious of my connection with Ethan. Had been for years. Jealous that I appeared to have my life together while she struggled. The engagement meal was the result of envy combined with a strange protective impulse that even she couldn't understand. She'd spent years feeling like she was competing with me because of her own issues with having to be first, needing to be better, and requiring external affirmation that she was valuable. The therapist assisted her in recognizing this tendency. I told her that I let my rage transform me into someone worse than the person I was angry at. That I really apologized for the public humiliation, the panic episodes, the medicine, and everything that followed. We spoke for 2 hours. Really chatted. It's not just about the surface, it was uncomfortable, and we both sobbed. But it was honest in a manner we'd never experienced with each other. When we departed, we didn't embrace or make arrangements to meet up again. We just admitted that we had both made mistakes in separate ways and would have to live with the consequences. I showed Ethan the letter I'd written to Lily. I sent him a photo of it, along with a long text stating that I'd begun seeing a therapist to find out why I believed retribution was appropriate, and why I allowed anger take precedence over anything else. I asked whether he would be willing to attempt couples counseling. He did not react for 3 days. Then he texted, stating he'd attempt counseling, but making no guarantees. We hired a counselor who specializes in relationship difficulties and began meeting once a week. The sessions were harsh. Ethan forced me to recognize how my behaviors demonstrated a penchant for brutality that clearly worried him. The counselor pressed me on my anger, sense of justice and readiness to punish someone who had wronged me, forcing me to examine patterns in my life in which I had carried grudges or cut people off entirely rather than working through disagreement. Ethan discussed trust and if he could establish a life with someone who would take deliberate retribution on him eventually. I had to sit there and listen, accepting that I had harmed something that might never fully recover. Over the following several months, I attempted to demonstrate by my actions that I could manage disagreement differently, that I could choose to talk things out rather than get even, and that I could be someone worthy of trust again. It was slow and difficult, and some days Ethan looked at me as if he was still unsure whether he wanted to stay. Nonetheless, we continued to attend counseling sessions and attempt. Thanksgiving at my parents' place seemed like going through a minefield where everyone was aware of the dangers yet pretended they did not exist. My aunt, who had uninvited me for Christmas, arrived but sat at the other end of the table without looking at me once during the dinner. My uncle made light chat about the weather and football scores, but he avoided anything that may lead to a serious topic. My mother carefully set the table, ensuring that I sat between Ethan and my father, most likely to avoid awkward seating situations. She asked whether I needed additional filling or another role in the same courteous, detached voice she had used with a stranger. My father tried harder, asking about work and how the apartment was, but even his inquiries seemed prepared, as if he'd researched what safe topics to bring up. Lily wasn't present. Nobody asked any follow-up questions when my mother indicated that she would be spending the holiday with friends. The vacant chair where she typically sat seemed louder than any talk at the table. My cousin, who had helped me spread the Jason rumor, arrived late and departed early, hardly making eye contact. Half of the regular audience was absent, and those who did attend spent the most of the evening looking uncomfortable. Dessert happened quickly, with folks making excuses about early starts or lengthy rides home. Ethan and I went before anyone mentioned watching football or playing cards like we used to. In the car, he asked whether I was okay, and I assured him I was okay, which we both knew was false. The fact was, I expected some people to remain angry, but seeing it happen, having my own family treat me like a polite stranger, brought it home in a way I hadn't anticipated. Christmas was made worse by my mother calling 3 weeks in advance and politely suggesting that Ethan and I come by on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day because Lily would be present on the actual holiday. She framed it as if she were giving me an option, but we both understood what she was saying. I informed her that Christmas Eve was okay. After I hung up, Ethan gripped my hand and whispered, "At least we'd have Christmas morning to ourselves." We arrived on Christmas Eve with gifts and handmade cookies that I had stress-baked the night before. My parents' house was adorned the same way it had been every year, yet something seemed different. My father hugged me at the door and hung on a bit too long, as if he was trying to make up for something. We gathered in the living room, unwrapping presents, and my mother gave me a scarf she had knitted and a gift card to a bookshop I enjoyed. Safe, tasteful presents that did not need much talk. I gave them a framed photo of myself and Ethan from a hiking trip we took in the autumn. And my mother displayed it on a side table rather than on the mantel with the other family photographs. We stayed for precisely 2 hours before making excuses about needing to get home to feed the cat. My mother accompanied us to the door and hugged me. For a brief moment, I thought she was going to say something serious, but she just drew back and urged me to drive safely. On the way home, I sobbed for the first time since the wedding. Not because anyone was unkind, but because my mother's cautious politeness stung more than I expected. Ethan returned after New Year's, but our relationship had changed. He left his belongings half-packed in boxes in the guest room closet, as if he wasn't quite committed to remaining. We went to counseling every week, and he gradually began opening one box at a time. But there were times when I caught him looking at me with a distrustful expression, as if he was waiting to see whether I'd do anything nasty again. We had a dispute in March when I got upset with a coworker for claiming credit for my project presentation. And I complained to Ethan about wanting to send the email chain to our employer to verify it was my work. He became quiet and asked whether I intended to disgrace her publicly or if I could simply talk to her personally. The question hit like a blow because I understood what he was truly asking. I ended up talking to the coworker in private, and we worked things out, and Ethan relaxed a little thereafter. But I knew he was watching, waiting to see who I was when I became enraged. The wedding revealed something about me that terrified him, and now I had to demonstrate, via 1,000 tiny decisions, that I could handle dispute without being harsh. I saw Lily at a family BBQ in June, 9 months after the wedding. My mother had told me she would be there and asked whether I could take it. I said yes. Chloe arrived with a guy I didn't recognize. She was dating someone fresh. He appeared regular, nice, and nothing like Jason. She noticed me across the yard and we both paused for a second. Then she walked over. We remained there awkwardly till she greeted me and asked how I was. I answered I was okay and asked how she was. She stated she was feeling better and that treatment was helping. We spoke for approximately 7 minutes about trivial matters, her new work at a marketing business, and my promotion at the clinic. Nothing profound. Nothing about the wedding, the engagement dinner, or the years of rivalry and cutting insults. Just two former sisters having a talk with someone they hardly know. Her new boyfriend came over and introduced us, and he appeared pleasant, truly kind, which made me hopeful that she had met someone decent. When they departed, she said it was nice to see me, and I responded the same, and we both meant it in the most subtle manner conceivable. Ethan subsequently asked whether I was okay, and I told him the truth. It was strange but manageable. Chloe and I would definitely never be close, but we could be in the same room without everything erupting. He nodded and continued. That was probably the best outcome I could hope for, given everything that happened. I could see he was correct. Some things you shatter are irreversibly damaged.